Hey guys, Dimension Master Studios here. How y'all doing? So I'm sure as you guys know, when it comes to Ninjago, we've gotten a lot of different characters over the years. And as a result of that, we've gotten a lot of really great female characters when it comes to the franchise. And with today being International Women's Day, I decided that I wanted to give you guys my list of my top 5 favorite female characters when it comes to Ninjago. Now, keep in mind, this list is just my own opinion, yours can be different, and that is totally fine. Feel free to leave your own personal list down below, and let's get into this whole thing. Number 5, Wildfire. Now, I feel like I've made it pretty clear that when it comes to my channel, for me personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of a lot of the stuff when it came to season 1 of Dragons Rising. I didn't think the season was bad by any means, but I don't think the season is as good as a lot of people are saying it is. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that we did get during the season, especially when it came to the new characters, personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of a lot of that stuff. However, Wildfire is one of the very few exceptions because I really liked Wildfire during the season. For starters, I really like Wildfire's personality all throughout the season, with her being completely unhinged and animalistic all throughout the season. Personally, I thought that was genuinely hilarious, and it was something unique compared to other Ninjago characters that we've gotten over the years, which I think is cool. I also thought that Wildfire's backstory was really interesting, with her essentially being the Ninjago version of Superman and her being raised by dragons her whole life. I thought that was pretty interesting. I also like Wildfire's story throughout the season of her learning how to calm down and her learning how to work alongside others, while at the same time keeping parts of her more animalistic and unhinged personality while she did it and using that stuff when she needed to. Again, I thought that was something pretty interesting. And finally, I really liked Wildfire's dynamic with Kai during the season. I thought it was absolutely amazing seeing these two interact all throughout the events of the season, and seeing Kai essentially mentoring a younger version of himself and him teaching Wildfire a bunch of different things. Personally, I thought that was honestly a really great thing to see, and I feel like it led to a lot of really great and really funny moments all throughout the season. And to be honest with you guys, I feel like after Lloyd and the amazing stuff that we got with him during the season, Kai and Wildfire were definitely carrying the season because of how great these two were during it. And again, while I wasn't the biggest fan of a lot of the stuff that we got during season 1 of Dragons Rising, Wildfire was definitely one of the few exceptions, and I really liked her during the season. Number 4, Faith. Faith was one of the new characters who we were introduced to during Season 9, and to be honest with you guys, not only was Faith my favorite new character that we got during Season 9, but she was genuinely my favorite new character that we got during the Oni trilogy as a whole. I really liked Faith. For starters, I really like the twist of Faith being heavy metal. This is something that genuinely came out of nowhere because this wasn't really revealed by the sets or the marketing for the season, so the twist came as a genuine surprise, which I thought was pretty interesting. Additionally, I also like that when it came to Faith all throughout the season, Faith was doing whatever she could to stop Iron Baron and turn away from him, because she realized that when it came to all the stuff that Iron Baron was doing, he was a bad guy, and Faith wasn't agreeing with the stuff that Iron Baron was doing, so she wanted to do what she could to get away from Iron Baron, to the point that she was willing to leave the First Realm itself in order to get away from him. And at one point later on during the season, Faith even tries to convince the Hunters that Iron Baron is a bad guy and he doesn't actually care about him. And as we know, Faith was right about this because Iron Baron doesn't actually care about the Hunters. And one other big thing that I like when it comes to Faith is that after Iron Baron is defeated, Faith actually decides to stay in the First Realm in order to help out all the Hunters, and she's willing to do what she can in order to help out the Hunters adjust to life no longer hunting dragons, and instead the Hunters being friends with the dragons. And when it comes to Faith, she essentially does what she can to try and fix the First Realm after everything that Iron Baron did to essentially break it, which I think is honestly really interesting. And seeing Faith decide to stay in the First Realm after she spent the entire season trying to get out of it, I thought that was something genuinely powerful when it came to the season. And so overall, when it comes to Faith, she's another character in the show who I really like. Number 3, Pixel. Pixel has been around for a pretty long time when it comes to Ninjago, and Pixel is a character who I do really like when it comes to the franchise. For starters, I really like Pixel during seasons 3 and 4 of Ninjago, with her learning more about emotions and her learning more about what it meant to be a human. I thought that was honestly a really interesting story for Pixel to get, and I really like the effect that this had on Zane during the events of those seasons, because when it comes to Zane and Pixel during seasons 3 and 4, the two of them essentially have this storyline revolving around the two of them learning more about what it means to be the other one, with Pixel learning more about how to be a human and Zane learning more about how to be a robot. I thought that was pretty interesting. I also like the idea of Pixel becoming Samurai X. I think this is a genuinely good idea when it comes to the show, because with Pixel having a physical body, it can give her a more active role in the story and she can do more stuff in order to help out the ninja, which I think is honestly something really cool. And admittedly, while I feel like the show doesn't always handle this the best, like during the Oni trilogy for example, I feel like when the show does handle this really well, then we can get some legitimately great stuff from Pixel, like during season 11, season 12, and even during Crystallize, I feel like Pixel had some pretty good moments. And finally, I really like the relationship between Zane and Pixel. I feel like these two have one of the best relationships that we've seen when it comes to the franchise, with these two learning a lot from each other during seasons 3 and 4, and the two of them essentially always being there for each other over the events of the show. And I feel like these two genuinely have one of the healthiest relationships that we've ever seen when it comes to the show, which I think is pretty cool. And so overall, when it comes to Pixel, while I feel like the show doesn't always handle her the best, and I made an entire video discussing that, I still feel like Pixel is a genuinely great character when it comes to Ninjago. Number 2, Nia. Nia has been around ever since the beginning when it comes to Ninjago, and Nia to this day is still one of my favorite characters that we've ever gotten when it comes to Ninjago. I really like Nia. For starters, I really like the evolution of Nia that we saw over the first few seasons of the show, with Nia initially starting off as just being Kai's sister, to her eventually becoming Samurai X, to her eventually becoming the Ninja of Water, which is the role that she still has to this day. I think that's honestly something really interesting, getting a chance to see how Nia changed over time when it came to the show. Not only that, but something else that I really like when it comes to Nia is that when it comes to a majority of her stories that she's gotten over the events of the show, a majority of them revolve around Nia's identity and who she wants to be and the role that she wants to have. This is something that was explored a lot during Season 5, 6, Seabound, and even Season 11 to an extent, which I think is honestly something really interesting to see. I also feel like as a result of this kind of thing, it results in us getting some of the most emotional stories that we've ever seen when it comes to the show, which I think is pretty cool. Additionally, I feel like Nia has also been involved in a lot of genuinely emotional moments when it comes to the franchise, which I think is also interesting. I also feel like Nia has gotten a significant amount of character development over the show, with her growing a lot, which I also think is pretty great. And finally, I also really like the relationship between her and Jay. Admittedly, I don't think it's the best Ninjago relationship that we've gotten, but still, I do like the relationship between Jay and Nia, and I feel like for the most part, it is honestly handled pretty well when it comes to the show. And overall, Nia is another character in the show who I really like, and when it comes to Nia, she's even in my top 10 favorite characters when it comes to Ninjago. Number 1. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, then you knew exactly who was going to be in the number 1 spot. And for those of you who are newer to my channel and don't know, number 1, Aita. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but Aita is one of my absolute favorite characters when it comes to Ninjago. I really like Aita when it comes to the show. For starters, I think that Akita's introduction into the show is absolutely perfect, and I feel like her introduction does a really great job of setting up Aita as a character, as well as introducing the mystery of who she is for the first few episodes of the Ice chapter. I thought that was pretty good. I really like Akita's backstory / focus episode, Last of the Formlings. It is one of my favorite episodes in all of Ninjago. I feel like this episode does a really great job of fleshing out Akita's backstory, as well as also fleshing out Aita in general by giving her a lot of depth and development during this episode. I thought that was pretty cool. I really liked Akita's storyline throughout the events of the Ice chapter, of her learning how to see the good in the world again and her overcoming her trust issues, as well as her learning how to let go of the idea of revenge. I thought that was honestly something really interesting to see. And finally, I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I really like the storyline between Lloyd and Akita during the Ice chapter, with the two of them both being able to help the other one heal from their trauma and overcome their trust issues. Again, I think that this is the best story that we've ever gotten when it comes to the show. Mainly because a majority of the story revolves around Lloyd and Akita talking to each other about their trauma and the other one listening and being there for the other person, which allows the two of them to work through their trauma and eventually overcome it. And when it comes to the story, it essentially has this really big message revolving around how you can go through a lot of trauma, but that doesn't mean stuff is always going to be that way, and there are people out there who can and want to help you, which I think is honestly a really powerful message for the show to send. But finally, the last and by far the biggest reason why I really like Akita so much is because Akita is the reason why I continue to watch Ninjago. This is something that I talked about during my video discussing the NetherRealm situation a few months back, but as I said in that video, after I watched Season 8 and the first episode of Season 9, I went into my Ninjago Dark Age and I essentially stopped watching the show for a while. That was, however, until late 2020 when I started watching some Ninjago clips on YouTube, and I saw a lot of stuff revolving around Akita, and I really liked the stuff that I saw with her and Lloyd during the Ice chapter, to the point where I continued to watch Ninjago. So when it comes to Akita, she is essentially the reason why I remained a Ninjago fan, and she is basically the reason why I'm making videos at this point, because of how much I like the franchise and how much I want to talk about it. And when it comes to Akita, again, she is one of my favorite characters when it comes to the franchise, and as I've said on a few different occasions, Akita and Zane are both tied for being my overall favorite characters when it comes to the Ninjago franchise. And so, yeah, when it comes to Akita, again, she is definitely my favorite female character when it comes to the franchise, and again, she is essentially my favorite Ninjago character of all time. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So tell me down below, what do you guys think? Tell me, what are your guys' favorite female characters when it comes to the Ninjago franchise? Again, tell me down below and I hope you guys enjoy. Later guys, this is Dimension Master Studios, signing off.